Today we're talking about an old game, a 25-year-old game called Planescape Torment. And this game is actually slightly older than me, but only by a couple of months. So this game is a classic, alright? This game, you'll see stuff online touting how it's the best story ever and how it's timeless and the writing is incredible. But I wanted to know for myself, and being a CRPG fan, I felt sort of obligated to play this game after, playing a bunch of other CRPGs that I absolutely love. So going in, I knew three things about this game, okay? I knew that the story was supposedly the best story ever told in the medium of video games. I knew that the combat was very janky and very just bad, and I knew that the entire game was pretty much janky and old. I mean, it's made in 1999. It's going to be janky, it's going to be old. But going into this, I wanted to answer some of my own questions. That being, is it fun? Is it good? Is it actually the best story ever told? And what can change the nature of a man? So starting the game up, you'll be greeted with this cinematic that kind of gives you the idea of what's going on, even though it doesn't explain anything. But this cinematic is absolute gold, okay? I love this cinematic so much. It's crusty, it's old, it looks kind of creepy, and it's just kind of weird, right? Like, it's old, man. There's a lot of things in this cinematic. There's a lot of characters being thrown around. There's a lot of flashes of events and things, and you're not going to understand any of it. You're not supposed to understand any of it, but this cinematic will actually make a lot of sense once you kind of understand the story and what goes on. So on a second playthrough, or when you understand everything that's going on here, it's actually quite interesting, but it still doesn't exactly answer a lot of questions. It's just kind of there. It's pretty good cinematic. I like it. So to start a new game, you click New Life, and you're greeted with the character creator, which is less of a character creator and more of an attribute assembly, if you will. You're really putting points into these various stats, and some of the stats matter a lot, and other stats don't really matter a lot. You can see what they do, but this is more of a social game. You're not really, the combat is there, but it's not the focus of the game. I went with the strength because I thought that would kind of counteract the bad combat, and it does, but you get a lot more dialogue options from things like wisdom and intelligence and charisma, so I would probably go with those instead, but I was pretty satisfied with my strength setup, so just pick whatever you want. So now let's talk about the RPG mechanics, because it's an RPG. It's a role-playing game. There are numbers, there are stats, there are builds, there are things to do. So how is it, right? So this is a game in 1999. Okay, so this game is 25 years old at this point, and it shows. Okay, so this is an old D&D system. This is an old D&D implementation into the video game format. So this stuff is just whack, okay? Like, I don't know how else to explain this. It's whack. Things are just backwards for how it is now and really how it should be. So AC is good, right? You want AC. It's your armor class. It determines how hard you are to actually hit. But here, high AC is bad. We don't want high AC, we want low AC. In fact, AC actually goes into the negative numbers. Now, I think, from what I understand, your AC is actually added to somebody's attack roll. So if you have a negative AC, you're adding a negative number to their attack roll, which lowers it and makes it harder to hit you. But I don't like this. I really don't like the AC, and in fact, there's not a lot of gear in the game, which we'll talk about in a minute, but you can't really change this AC a whole lot, so. And then we have THAC0, that THAC 0. It's not an O, it's a 0. And this stands for 2-hit AC 0. What? And this is basically your accuracy, okay? This is going to determine your accuracy. This is going to basically give you a better chance to hit something. All right, it gives you an additive It's very complicated, okay? I don't feel like going into it. I don't understand it fully. There's a lot of nerd math that happens. I'm not that kind of nerd, okay? I'm a video game nerd, not a make video game nerd. So it's your accuracy, basically. So THAC0 is good, AC is good, but low AC. You want more, you want your THAC0 to be up and your AC to be down, okay? That is basically it. There's really not a lot of gear, okay? There's not a lot of things that you equip and put on and use as armor and weapons and gear. There are some weapons, but most everything that's going to improve your character comes from either leveling or these charm things. These are kind of like your consumables. They're kind of like a potion or an elixir kind of thing, but they're all kinds of things, dude. They're so weird. You can eat a rat and it gives you like intelligence. But this is where most of your power comes from. Any additional power outside of leveling, right, is going to come from these charms. Otherwise, there are the occasional ring, maybe an amulet. There are a couple of pieces of armor that some of the companions can use, but for the most part, it's just charms and amulets. And the game actually fakes you out, because within the first 5 minutes of the game, you actually get a piece of armor to put on, and it's like a disguise. And I love disguises in games, okay? I love being able to put on some armor, some clothes, and blend in with, you know, different enemy types and stuff like that. But this is really the only time it happens, within the first 5 minutes, and then after that, there's just like no armor. So gearing is kind of non-existent. So combat, let's talk about combat. This is what you'll see online as the worst part of the game. And I don't necessarily think that's true. It's okay. It's a real time with pause, so you just kind of go, you just attack, and that's pretty much it. It's very janky. Sometimes you'll click on an enemy and your dudes will just stand there and just wait for them to come to you. Other times the enemy will try and run away. Sometimes like little thugs and stuff will run away after they get hit a certain amount of times, and then your people will just chase them to the ends of the earth, and you have to scramble to get them to come back and get under control. The lack of gear really does hurt the combat a lot. There's not a lot of interesting items and things to engage with to improve your character as far as combat goes. So engaging in combat is more of like just getting a roadblock out of the way, rather than, hey, there are enemies to fight and I want to fight them because they may drop a good piece of gear or something. You'll find the occasional ring that improves your armor class or gives you some sort of spell when evoked, and those are cool, but there's not a lot of them, and they're hard to find. Whether it be your spells, your attacks, your positioning, it's all very unresponsive. Alright, this game shows its age, and the combat shows the age the hardest. I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's not terrible, okay? There is fun. It's very simple, okay? You highlight everybody, and then you click on somebody, and you just let them go. There is fun in the simplicity, and, you know, clicking on guys and watching them run off and attack, it's okay. And it has some good sound design to go with it, so when your dude hits a hit or a critical hit, it sounds pretty good. You know, I'm like, okay, I got hit, nice. Overall, the combat, I don't want to say it's terrible, because I don't really think it's terrible. It's not great, and it's definitely not the reason that you play this game. So I recommend just turning the difficulty down and just enjoying the rest of the game. Okay, but let's talk about the good part of the game, which is the story, alright? And I'll throw up a spoiler alert now, but it's been 25 years. If you like RPGs, if you like good stories, if you like reading a lot, then you should definitely play Planescape. I was not sold on this game right away. It took me probably 8 hours of a 16-hour playthrough to really get involved with what was going on, and to actually start having like a decent amount of fun. Like, it's not bad. The game is not bad, but it feels like you could be playing better things until the story hooks you, and it hooks you good, okay? So Planescape Torment takes place in the Planescape setting. Could have fooled me. Basically, the Planescape setting it's like Dungeons and Dragons, kind of an offshoot of Dungeons and Dragons, except it's got everything. It's got multiple dimensions, it's got multiverses, it's got It's got everything. If you can think of something imaginative and creative, just it goes in the Planescape setting, right? This thing's got everything. There's electricity and power and robots and magic, and it's got everything. The game takes place in Sigil, which is kind of a hub for all these different dimensions and stuff. This is where just everybody goes, okay? And it's called the Pathway of Doors. No, it's not. It's called the City of Doors. I didn't write it down. I don't know what it's called, but it's something to do with doors, and the doors are portals to all these various dimensions and multiverses and just everywhere. You can get anywhere in Sigil, and this is where the game takes place, so you'll see all kinds of people to talk to, and there's a lot of them. So you play as the Nameless One. This is this dude who wakes up in a mortuary, and you were dead, so not anymore. And that's kind of the idea of the game, is you play as the Nameless One. You are immortal, but every time you die, you technically you can die, but you wake back up, and when you do wake up from being dead, you have no idea of anything. You lose all your memories. You're a blank slate every time you wake up. And because it takes place in the Planescape setting, you just kind of got to go with stuff. All right, you're going to see some weird things. You just got to go with it. Like Mort. This is Mort. He's a floating skull. And I mean, you can learn about him, but why is he floating? Who is this guy? I don't know. He just is there. And you just got to go with it. Like, just go with it. Right? He's a floating skull. Sure, why not? Move on. And that's the best way to approach this game, because there's a lot of weird stuff. And you just accept it, move on. This is just the way it is. There are floating skulls here. And so there you go. This one's called Mort. He's a pretty good guy. The story already sets off a very immersive experience, because the guy you play as, this Nameless One guy, he has no idea what's going on. He has no idea who he is, where he is, what's going on. And that's very convenient, because I just started up the game and I kind of feel the same way. I don't know what's going on. So as you go through the game, you'll run across the aftermath of some of your previous incarnations, the previous lives that you have led, and most of them are pretty awful. And you're everywhere, okay? This has been going on for forever. You have been dying and reviving and dying and reviving, and you just happen to be playing as the most recent incarnation and the one that makes the most impact, so that's pretty cool. You can talk to pretty much anybody in this game, and they have a lot to say, and a lot of it is how do I say this? Not important. It does a really good job with world building. Okay, you can walk up to somebody, you can learn about their life or what they do for a living, and just, it has a lot of world building. You can learn a lot about the city and what people do and how people live, and a lot of other stuff that I don't personally care about, so that's nice. So you can talk to anybody, but again, only a handful of them really have important things to say. But there is a lot of information to learn from these people. So on repeat playthroughs, you'll definitely always be learning something new. That is a fact. So partway through the game, about halfway through the game, your objective is to hunt down this witch that you learn about. Her name is Ravel. Kind of a weird name, but you have to hunt her down. It's a really long quest. Okay, this mid part of the game is where I felt the most bored, really. Anyway, so you track down Ravel, and this lady, she sells the game. The conversation you have with Ravel is probably the single greatest moment in the entire game, and that's really not an exaggeration. There are some other really good moments in the game after this, but the conversation with Ravel just takes the game to the next level and completely sold me on it. All right, so she basically tells you everything that you need to know leading up to this very moment, and then everything you need to do, or everything you can do, moving forward. And this is huge, absolutely huge. If you're confused, I was a little confused. You talk to Ravel, and she pretty much clears everything up, even though she talks kind of like Yoda. Like, I don't know, she's weird. So basically, the general idea is that your first incarnation, your first life, you walk up to Ravel and you're like, hey, make me immortal. And she's like, okay. So she does this ritual, and one of the side effects of this ritual is ripping your mortality from your body. So you basically are walking around without a soul. You continue to live, right? You die and live and die and live. But you're more of a husk. So you got to fix it, all right? Otherwise, every time you die, you lose a piece of your mind, you'll go crazy and basically completely lose yourself and probably go on a rampage through Sigil, which not a good idea. So you got to fix it. You got to find your mortality, and she kind of directs you off into the second half of the game. So this is kind of the turning point, or the tilting point to the second half of the game. But she has questions of her own, and the big one that you'll see when you look this game up is,
what can change the nature of a man?
That's a pretty good question. I don't know. So this very open-ended question kind of powers the second half of the game. You'll run around and you'll collect stuff and you'll find keys, and you're like, oh, I gotta go find this guy. Now I gotta go find this guy. Now I gotta go talk to this guy. And each time you talk to somebody, you're learning a lot more about your previous incarnations, who you are, what you do, how you fit into the world, stuff like that. I don't want to spoil the rest of the game because honestly, this story, if I were to go through and walk you through everything, we would be here for hours. I mean, a 5-hour, 6-hour, 7-hour, 8-hour, 12-hour retrospective. I don't want to do that. My computer cannot process that many hours of this. So I'm just going to leave it there. What can change the nature of a man? That's the big thing. That's the big question. And that's kind of the point of the story. And it goes off and it does some fun stuff, great revelations and twists and turns. And it's a really good story because it has this grounded human nature storytelling. It makes it very engaging. So even though you're running around, you're throwing magic around, you're fighting monsters, and you're talking to robots, and all these crazy things happen in the Planescape setting, the story is very rooted in reality. And so it's this back and forth where you get to see all these fancy things, but what's going on and what they're talking about is very real, very impactful. It makes you think about how you could apply the things that people are saying to your own life. So saying it's one of the best stories in gaming, I mean, that's a bold statement. You're talking better than Red Dead 2, better than Knights of the Old Republic. It's pretty much better than all of them, okay? I was very skeptical going into this, but I can tell you that this is better than all of those games because it does such a good job of tying the reality with fantasy. And so the fantasy makes it very exciting, but the reality part of it makes it very engaging. It's very rich, it's very exciting, and most importantly, it's very well written. So when you're spending hours upon hours reading dialogue and sifting through dialogue options and talking to people and reading things, it makes it fun because it's fun to read. You're basically playing a novel, which is good. I like that. So in conclusion, is this game good? Is this game fun? Kinda. The RPG mechanics, they're dated, they're old, they're not as good as they could be, and the combat is not that great, okay? The combat is not that great, but it's ultimately not terrible, okay? For the time that this was made, this was really good, and this was very innovative. We've made a lot of progress in gaming over the past 25 years, but the fact that this game from 1999 is still very good is telling. And the main reason that this game is still worth playing today is the story. It's that timeless writing, it's that timeless story, and it's a timeless classic because of it. You need to be here for the story. You're not here for the gameplay. You're not here for the RPG mechanics or the build crafting of your character. Oh, I want a strength build. You're not here for that. You're here for the story. You're here for the decisions to make in the story. And because of that, you really want to go for a more social build, lots of intelligence, wisdom, charisma, things that are going to unlock some of those dialogue options where maybe strength or dexterity or something like that won't necessarily benefit you while you're talking to people. It's more of a combat application. I do recommend this game, but only to those that have a certain level of patience. This game does require quite a bit of patience and reading. So if you like reading, then this is a good game. But you really do need to be patient because the combat will kind of wear on you a little bit as you play, and especially early when the game can be a little vague with where you need to go. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. It really does help the channel. Let me know if you've played or heard of Planescape Torment down in the comments, and until next time.